Did you know that some of the most beautiful and intricate art ever created actually emerged from the so-called Dark Ages? It's a period often misunderstood, shrouded in myths of ignorance and decline. But the reality is far more fascinating. Contrary to popular belief, this era was not devoid of creativity or learning. In fact, it was a time when knowledge was fiercely protected and cherished, even as the world outside seemed uncertain and dangerous. In monasteries across Ireland and Britain, monks devoted their lives to crafting illuminated manuscripts, masterpieces of calligraphy, vibrant illustration, and spiritual devotion. These works were painstakingly created by hand, often taking years to complete, and each page was a labor of love and faith. The Book of Kells stands as a breathtaking testament to the era's skill, imagination, and devotion. Its pages are filled with swirling patterns, mythical creatures, and brilliant colors, challenging our assumptions about the so-called darkness of the period. If such artistry and dedication could thrive in these times, what else might we have misunderstood about this era? The evidence of creativity is all around us, waiting to be rediscovered. The term Dark Ages suggests a void, but the reality was a tapestry woven from both hardship and innovation. Communities adapted, found new ways to survive, and even to flourish. Despite the constant threat of Viking raids and political turmoil, monks and scholars persevered. They preserved knowledge, copied ancient texts, and created beauty as an act of worship and hope for the future. Their dedication ensured that the intellectual and cultural heritage of the past survived, hidden away in libraries and monasteries, waiting for the world to rediscover it centuries later. So, as we explore this remarkable period, let's set aside the idea of darkness and look instead for the sparks of light that shine through history. See it as a time of transformation, an age of resilience, creativity, and progress, where new ideas and new forms of beauty emerged from adversity. The story of the Dark Ages is not one of collapse, but of new societies rising, and new forms of art and knowledge blossoming from the ruins of the old world. It's a story of survival, adaptation, and the enduring human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest times, creativity and hope can light the way forward. To truly understand the Dark Ages, we must first look back at the Roman Empire, a superpower that united much of Europe for centuries, shaping the continent's destiny. Rome's influence stretched from the windswept coasts of Britain to the deserts of North Africa, binding together a vast and diverse world under a single banner. Roman law, language, and culture brought stability and a sense of shared identity. But by the 5th century, the empire was crumbling under the weight of both internal decay and relentless external pressures. The official end came in 476 AD, when the last Roman emperor was deposed by invading forces. Yet the fall was not a single event, but a slow unraveling that took decades, even centuries, to play out. Economic troubles, political corruption, and waves of invasions broke down the systems that had held Rome together, leaving a power vacuum across the continent. Cities emptied, trade routes faltered, and the old order faded away. The early Middle Ages, or Dark Ages, followed, stretching from the 5th to the 10th century, a time often misunderstood and shrouded in myth. Europe fractured into smaller kingdoms and tribal territories. Cities shrank and life became more local, uncertain, and sometimes perilous. People had to adapt to a world where the old certainties were gone. The term Dark Ages was coined much later by Renaissance scholars, who looked back and saw this era as a miserable interruption between the glory of Rome and their own enlightened age. They emphasized what was lost, literature, art, and knowledge, and often ignored what was created in its place. In reality, this was the slow, difficult birth of a new European civilization. People learned new skills, forged new alliances, and found ways to survive and even thrive. What seemed like darkness was actually a period of profound transformation and resilience. New leaders and peoples struggled to build order from the ashes, laying the groundwork for future societies. The era was not a void, but a foundation for the Europe to come, a time when seeds of change were quietly taking root. The story of the so-called Dark Ages is one of adaptation, resilience, and the slow forging of a new world, not simply disappearance. For most people in the early Middle Ages, life was a daily struggle for survival. Over 90% were peasants, living in small villages and working the land. Their homes were simple, often shared with animals for warmth, and lacked basic comforts like running water. Society was rigidly hierarchical, Peasants worked land owned by lords in exchange for protection, with little personal freedom. Daily life followed the sun and seasons, with relentless labor using simple tools. Disease, famine, and violence were constant threats, making life expectancy short. Community and Christian faith provided support and hope amid uncertainty. This combination of resilience and belief was the foundation of their endurance. The peasant diet was simple: heavy bread made from rye or barley and hearty vegetable stew, often flavored with whatever herbs or roots could be found nearby. Meals were basic but filling enough to fuel long days of labor in the fields. Occasionally peasants might add eggs or fish to their meals, especially if they lived near rivers or kept a few chickens. These were rare treats, breaking the monotony of their daily fare. Meat was a luxury, mostly reserved for the tables of lords and nobles. For most villagers, survival depended on what they could grow in their gardens, gather from the wild, or preserve for lean times. The agricultural year dictated every task. Spring was for plowing and planting as families worked together to prepare the earth and sow seeds for the coming months. Summer brought endless days of tending crops, and autumn signaled the exhausting but vital harvest, when every able hand was needed to gather the year's bounty. The entire community joined forces during harvest, knowing that their collective effort meant the difference between plenty and hunger in the months ahead. Winter brought a pause to the relentless work, but also new challenges. Food stores dwindled, and the cold made every day a struggle to stay warm and fed. During these long, dark months, people mended tools, wove cloth, and tried to stretch their supplies, but hunger and uncertainty were constant companions. The unending cycle of the seasons shaped every aspect of life, from the food on the table to the rhythm of daily chores and celebrations. Foraging for wild berries, nuts, and herbs, and carefully rationing every meal were essential skills for survival. The dreaded hungry gap before spring's first harvest was a yearly ordeal, testing the patience and resilience of every family. The rhythm of hard work and frequent scarcity defined medieval existence, shaping both bodies and spirits. Each year was a test of endurance, resourcefulness, and the ability to adapt to whatever the land and weather brought. The land was both provider and adversary, shaping the lives of those who depended on it for every meal and every hope for the future. The Christian Church was the most powerful institution in early medieval Europe, shaping daily life and community identity. The local church was the center of village life, where people were baptized, married, and buried. Church bells marked time, and faith offered comfort and meaning amid hardship. People believed in a world filled with the supernatural, God, saints, miracles, but also demons and evil spirits. Relics and pilgrimages were sources of hope and healing. Fear of hell and the promise of salvation shaped behavior and choices. The clergy, often the only literate members of society, guided both spiritual and practical matters. Monasteries were centers of learning, charity, and innovation. The church provided stability and a shared sense of purpose in a fragmented world. Faith and superstition coexisted, offering both comfort and control. Many myths about the Dark Ages persist, but most are false. Contrary to popular belief, educated people knew the Earth was round, following ancient Greek teachings. The flat Earth myth was invented centuries later to make the era seem ignorant. Technological progress didn't stop. Innovations like the heavy plow and horse collar transformed agriculture. Society developed codes to regulate violence, and the church promoted peace through decrees like the peace of God. Hygiene was valued more than stereotypes suggest. People bathed when possible, and Vikings were known for their grooming. The image of constant filth and ignorance is exaggerated. Medieval people made practical efforts to stay clean and healthy. The era was not a time of total stagnation or chaos. It was a period of adaptation, invention, and evolving social order. The truth is far more nuanced than the myths. After Rome's fall, learning survived in monasteries, where monks became the scribes and librarians of their age. In scriptoriums, they painstakingly copied not just religious texts but also classical works, preserving ancient knowledge. Without their efforts, much of Roman and Greek literature would have vanished. Monasteries were also centers of artistic creation. Illuminated manuscripts like the Book of Kells are masterpieces of devotion and beauty. These works bridged the ancient and medieval worlds, keeping intellectual heritage alive. Monks innovated in agriculture, managed estates, and provided charity and healing. They brewed ale, made wine, and developed medicines. monasteries were islands of stability and knowledge in uncertain times. Their influence shaped the future of Europe. The quiet work of monks ensured the survival of Western civilization's foundations. They were the guardians of learning and creativity. Amid the chaos, Charlemagne emerged as a unifying force, building an empire across Western Europe. Crowned emperor in 800 AD, he revived the idea of a unified Christian West. Charlemagne valued learning, inviting scholars like Alcuin of York to reform education and standardize religious practice. The Carolingian Renaissance saw the creation of schools and a new clear script, Carolingian minuscule, that made reading and copying texts easier. This script is the ancestor of our modern lowercase letters. Charlemagne's reforms preserved and spread knowledge, laying groundwork for future growth. Though his empire didn't last, the impact of his educational revival was profound. The Carolingian Renaissance was a crucial moment of recovery, not a full rebirth, but it rekindled the light of learning. Charlemagne's vision echoed through the Middle Ages. His legacy was a foundation for Europe's intellectual revival. The Dark Ages label is misleading. It ignores the era's resilience and transformation. Despite hardship and instability, new societies, languages, and innovations emerged from Rome's ashes. Technological advances and the preservation of knowledge in monasteries shaped the future. Figures like Charlemagne proved that unity and learning could thrive even in difficult times. This period was a crucible, forging a uniquely European civilization. The struggles and achievements of the era led to the rise of universities and cathedrals. The story of history is never simple. Even in darkness, there is always light to be found. By understanding this era, we see the deep roots of our own world.